You might be wondering how to remember so many doctrines of constitutional interpretation and use them effectively in your UPSC answers, especially under time pressure. By the end of this video, you will be completely clear about the key doctrines, their purpose, and how to apply them in mains and interviews. We will take a beginner-friendly route, building each doctrine visually and simply. And towards the end, we will understand a key idea that most UPSC aspirants miss. Think of constitutional interpretation as a toolkit judges use to solve different puzzles when laws or entries seem unclear or conflicting. First, the doctrine of incidental and ancillary powers. Imagine a main toolbox labeled tax and small tools like penalties and anti-evasion measures that help the main tool work. This doctrine says a legislative entry should be read broadly to include reasonable incidental powers necessary for its execution, but not to expand into unrelated fields like confiscation. Key cases to remember are Chaturbhuj versus Union of India, which upheld license fees as part of taxation, and Godfrey Phillips, which said tax power covers events related to that tax unless another list covers them. Next, the doctrine of precedent or stare decisis. Courts follow earlier decisions to ensure certainty, and Article 141 makes the Supreme Court's law binding on all courts. In practice, lower courts must respect Supreme Court rulings, and ignoring them can render a judgment null and void. So cite precedents clearly in answers. Now the doctrine of occupied field. Picture Parliament laying a wide carpet over an area. Once the field is occupied by a central law, state laws cannot tread over it. This is important for union and state lists and becomes crucial when laws overlap in the concurrent list, where Article 254 guides repugnancy and conflict resolution. The court uses tests like direct conflict, intended occupation, and occupied field to decide repugnancy. And remember, the precedents assent exception, which can temporarily validate a state law. Moving on to prospective overruling. Think of a judge correcting an earlier roadmap, but saying the new route applies from today onward, not retroactively. Introduced in India through Golaknath and refined later, prospective overruling avoids disrupting settled transactions while correcting legal errors. And the Supreme Court alone shapes this doctrine. The rationale is pragmatic. Prevent chaos, avoid reopening settled disputes, and ensure justice in transition. Examples include its use in Mandal and Karunakar judgments. The doctrine of harmonious construction asks judges to reconcile conflicting provisions so both can survive, like fitting two puzzle pieces to form a single picture. This rule is often applied between fundamental rights and directive principles, or between various entries of the 7th schedule, and cases like DAV College and Sri Venkalaramana illustrate its application. In answers, show how the court attempts reconciliation before accepting that one provision must yield to another. Now compare interpretive approaches quickly with simple metaphors. Liberal interpretation treats the Constitution as a living tree that grows with society. Literal interpretation reads the word strictly, like following a recipe word for word, while purposive interpretation asks why the provision was included and focuses on the object or purpose. Creative interpretation is judicial innovation. Courts evolving new doctrines like the basic structure to address gaps. So cite Keshavananda Bharati as the classic example. Practically, use liberal interpretation when rights need expansion. Stick to literal meaning when textual clarity is decisive. And apply purposive reasoning when intent matters to the issue. A short tip for UPSC answers. Always name the doctrine, state the relevant article or case, apply it to the fact pattern, and conclude with a balanced outcome. For instance, if a state law incidentally affects a union subject, discuss incidental powers. Then test for substantial encroachment or occupied field and cite relevant precedents. Also remember Article 246, Article 254, Article 141, and Article 368 as frequent hooks in constitutional questions and use them to anchor your analysis. Let me give you a compact memory map. Incidental powers expand reasonable means. Precedent binds lower courts. Occupied field bars state laws in a covered area. And prospective overruling limits retroactivity. Harmonious construction seeks reconciliation. Liberal widens scope. Literal restricts to text. Purposive looks at intent. And creative supplies judicial fixes like the basic structure doctrine. Exam markers love crisp application and case names. So pepper your answers with Chaturbhuj, Golaknath, Keshwanand Bharti, and Godfrey Phillips where relevant. A common trap aspirants fall into is describing doctrines in isolation. Instead, contrast two doctrines on the same fact to show deeper understanding. Quick example. If a state tax law appears to touch betting and gambling, test incidental powers, but check if entry 62 explicitly covers the tax, preventing stretch by doctrine misuse. Another exam-ready move is to propose a short conclusion recommending harmonious construction where feasible to avoid invalidating important social legislation. Remember that constitutional interpretation is not only legal toolkit work, but also a value choice about balancing rights, policy, and democratic governance. To recap concisely, learn the doctrine name, one-line meaning, one key case, and a short application line for each doctrine so you can deploy them under pressure. You are closer than you think to mastering this topic if you practice a few fact patterns and link doctrines to article numbers and leading judgments. If you want, EduRev has focus notes, case summaries, and practice questions that follow this exact compact structure to boost your answer writing. Keep revising these doctrines, practice applying them to sample UPSC prompts, and come back for more bite-sized videos to sharpen your clarity and speed. Good luck! Keep reading landmark judgments, and remember that clear application beats long theory in UPSC answers. So practice smartly with EduRev.